in 1848. Back then, women in the US weren't allowed to do a lot of things men were, like vote, and it would take them another 70 years to be granted that fundamental right. Why? Well, many thought encouraging women's involvement in politics would undermine society. The prospect of women voting was threatening to the white men who held power. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott decided to organize factions across the country that were campaigning for suffrage, or the right to vote. The convention at Seneca Falls, New York addressed women's rights and inspired other conventions and meetings. Stanton considered it the beginning of the women's rights movement. After the Civil War, the 15th Amendment was introduced, which would give black men, but not women of any color, the right to vote. Suffragists were split. Stanton and Susan B. Anthony opposed the amendment, objecting to the exclusion of women. They formed the National Woman Suffrage Association, hoping to pass a constitutional amendment that included women. Others, like abolitionists Lucy Stone and Henry Blackwell, supported the 15th Amendment. They founded the American Woman Suffrage Association and lobbied for the women's right to vote on a state level instead of through a national amendment. The 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870. Black men could vote, but women still couldn't. In 1878, a women's suffrage amendment penned by Susan B. Anthony was finally proposed in Congress, but it was defeated on the Senate floor in 1887. In 1890, the separate suffrage movements merged, opting to tackle suffrage by state in the wake of the federal amendment's defeat. Within 6 years, Colorado, Utah, and Idaho granted women the right to vote. Wyoming had already done it in 1869. Around the same time, the National Association of Colored Women was formed, bringing together more than 100 black women's clubs. It included leaders Mary Church Terrell, Josephine Silent Yates, and Anna Julia Cooper. By the turn of the 20th century, the women's suffrage movement had gained renewed momentum. Parades, marches, and pickets drew great attention to the cause. Between 1910 and 1918, a number of states and territories expanded voting rights to women. In 1912, 15,000 suffrage supporters took to the streets of New York City. But as women's political power grew, so did the danger they faced. In 1913, on the eve of President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, hundreds of women were injured in a massive suffrage parade in the nation's capital. In November of 1917, 33 suffragists were arrested outside the White House. The women were clubbed, beaten, and tortured by prison guards at the Occoquan Workhouse. One of the movement's leaders, Alice Paul, founder of what became the National Woman's Party, was placed in solitary confinement in order to break her will and undermine her credibility. But press coverage of the women's treatment increased sympathy for their plight. And in 1918, Representative Jeanette Rankin, the first woman in Congress, opened congressional debate on a women's suffrage amendment. The resolution failed. In 1918, President Wilson also came out in favor of suffrage, declaring it was needed as a war measure. Wilson argued that women had been providing vital roles during World War I, and that their votes should be counted in order to make the world safe for democracy. Finally, in 1919, the Federal Women's Suffrage Amendment, the same one written by Susan B. Anthony back in 1878, was passed by the House and the Senate. And on August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was officially incorporated into the U.S. Constitution, prohibiting denying the vote to a U.S. citizen based on gender. Although states could still deny voting rights based on other things. It would take another 4 years for Native American women and men to get the right to vote, and more than 30 years before major restrictions were lifted on Asian American voting rights.
Alright, so the goal behind that, as it said in the video, was gain the right for women full political equality, just like the men had at the time. The biggest thing, so the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote in the U.S. Some of the strategies they used, like you guys saw in the videos, were peaceful protests, parades, petitions to raise awareness, public speeches. So, Nelly, if you lived back then, do you think you would go and protest? Yeah.
I'm not Nelly.
Or, sorry, what was your name? Rashida, sorry about that. Rashida, what do you think? Would you go protest, or
Yeah.
would you, have some friends to go with, or would you have the confidence to maybe go by yourself at first, or would you need a lot of other people?
I feel like more people.
More people would be the best, right? Maddie, what do you think? What would you do?
Our protest
Protest, yeah.
peacefully, but I would bring people with me. I would be too scared to go by myself.
Too scared to go by yourself. That makes sense. More people, the better, right? Strength in numbers.
Yeah, and it makes you more confident, like having other
Yeah.
people.
Because being able to vote is very important. Give you guys equal opportunity, transcend America. So the next thing you're gonna need to do is pull out your Chromebooks. This is what I was posted on this exact slideshow, and then if you go to the last slide, you'll see some links that will help you with this handout I'm about to pass down. So,
And guys, it should be, basically at the very top of your screen, or the classwork tab at the very top of that. It says, Mr. Fetter's lesson, today's date, it says program to full slideshow.
I restarted, so. Appreciate that. Everyone have a worksheet? Yeah. Yeah, like I said, so these links, you should learn some of the slides too, but if you need these links to kind of help you explain more and fill that out. Give you guys about 10 or 15 minutes to do that, and then wrap it up.
Are we putting this in?
Yeah, once you're finished, I'll collect it at the end.
Bless you, Katie. Thank you, Jesse.
Looks like most of you guys are still working, so put another 5 minutes up there.